We're delighted to be joined this evening by many will consider a League of Ireland legend in former Cork City and Shamrock Rovers man, Dan Murray. Dan, thanks very much for joining us this evening. A bit of a coup for us on Sport in Limerick.
Oh, I don't know about that, but thanks for having us anyway. I like the jersey behind us anyway.
Yeah. That's enemy territory for yourself tomorrow evening, Dan. First of all, I suppose to look at your own career and the distinguished career that you had. It started off at a very young age in Cambridge, I believe, in an academy setup. It's probably different to the academy setups of today. Maybe more of a tough schooling, Dan. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like you said, it was like the academy was a big thing back in England when I was playing there. Like you went into academy 10 years old, 11 years old. We're probably a small bit off that, unfortunately, in this country for a lot of clubs. But that's how it was. Yeah, like I said, it was just the norm, really. Like I think I started playing for like full time for Cambridge at 13, and that was like in this country, especially, we have a lot of breakdown between the local leagues and the national league teams. There was none of that when I was younger. When I was in England, it was just a case the best players went to the professional football clubs. That was just the way it was, and wouldn't have had it any other way. Really enjoyed it. Like like I said, I had 4 or 5 years at Cambridge United before I moved on to Peterborough. Then.
Yeah, he moved on to Peterborough, and obviously from just a bit of research I had done myself, would it be fair to say that when you did graduate to the first team at Peterborough, it was a frustrating time in terms of getting into the first team on a regular basis, even though you were pretty young at the time?
Yeah, it was. I think, like you said, I got in, made my got like a big thing when I was younger was getting the YTS. That was the big goal when I was at school. Like obviously, probably like a lot of people, school wasn't a big deal, as big a deal as it might have been, and like all I ever wanted to do was play football, get my YTS. That was the big thing. Then I got into that, and then obviously I made my debut at 17, which probably is quite young, especially for a centre half. For defenders and that, they normally come a bit later. And then obviously I probably thought I was going up, and it didn't really happen. I sort of stagnated a bit and wasn't playing. I hardly played any games for the actual first team, and then it got harder and harder, and the longer I stayed there, it was less and less likely that I was going to get in the first team. And then pretty much came to the manager that he was pretty much saying, I'm not sure you're going to get in the team ever. So that was the time when I came over to Cork City then.
Yeah, it's a bit more prevalent now than in the previous years. Since then, players coming over to Ireland, maybe even on a short-term basis from England. It was kind of, in your time, it was a lot less prevalent, players coming to the League of Ireland from England. How did that move to Cork come about originally?
So it's probably bore some people that they've heard this story so many times, but it was just a case like John O'Flynn. People would definitely have heard of him, definitely the Limerick, because he obviously
Limerick,
played
yeah.
there for a little bit. So he was at Cork City in the same YTS academy that I was in. We were the same age, sort of were obviously good friends and that. And he came home to Cove and back to Cork and started playing for Cork City. And it was literally, I think, Liam Murphy was the manager there, and they've had a few injuries. And he said, "John, is there any defenders out there that you think might come over?" And like literally, they rung me, and I didn't really have to think too much about it. Like most footballers, all I wanted to do was play, and I thought, right, this might be my best opportunity to get a match. To be honest, that was all I was looking for, and it was so long ago now. It was still a winter league. The last winter season was when I joined, and I sort of came on loan for about 3 or 4 months, and sort of loved it. Played every game that I was able to play in, and uh, sort of like probably say the rest is history. Like it was like then it was a case of they offered me a 2-year contract, and I was like, yeah, I'll sign that. Still a young lad. I think I was 20 when I signed that, so probably like a lot of players thinking, yeah, I'll sign that. And I may have as an English lad, I thought, right, I'll be going home after a couple of years maybe, and maybe have another crack at the English league. But like as it went on, had my 2 years, then got another contract, and sort of just loved it over here. Was playing well enough, and like you said, we had a pretty successful period at Cork City in a good team, and sort of never came up to really leave till I went to Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, you answered my question there in terms of, did you think that it was going to be a long-term thing when you stayed at Cork? You didn't believe so, but it obviously worked out that way. When you did arrive, Dan, there was a lot of Dublin dominance in the League of Ireland. That was always the case anyway throughout the decades, even before you arrived. But that was still the case when you arrived. Was there a real determination within the first group of Cork players to change that when you did arrive originally?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, Shells and Bows were the best two teams, but it was probably a time when the league was turning full time, if you know what I mean. So they were the two full time teams, and we were challenging them. But like I said, I think when I joined, I had Cork people, Cork players, Decky Daly, Stephen Napiers, Colin O'Brien, proper Cork people as well. So they hated losing to the Dubs as much as anyone else, and so that got ingrained to me coming into the club that you got to do everything to beat the Dublin teams, and sure that was the case throughout my career. Really, it just probably slightly changed when I had a little sabbatical up in Shamrock Rovers for a couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing, actually, Dan. I know that you give Pat Dolan a lot of credit with changing the mindset at Cork City, and change it to a professional setup. It's amazing, actually, that Pat's been so long out, bar a couple of advisory roles with Waterford and maybe Limerick. He's been so long out of the game. Just what was it like to play under Pat Dolan? Because he's seen as such a big character in all over the Electricity League by everyone.
Yeah, great time for Pat. Still would speak to him every now and again. Like I said, he was great for us, Cork City, in that period. Really, like it was sort of changing into full time football. A younger team trying to replace some of the older players, and he sort of was turning the club into a professional and a full time setup, and was probably had to force it through to a lot of people that we had to change our lifestyles, and few people had to change this, and he was just sort of building the club up as well, sort of turning us. We had, when I started, we had about 5 or 6 full-time players. Then Pat took him, we were up to 15 full-time players, and then when he left, we had a proper squad. We were a full-time football club, which is credit to himself. And like he'd know whatever football club he's at, he never would stop working for him, always pushing, always trying to be better. And like I said, he always thought that his team should be the best team in the division. So great time for Pat. Enjoyed playing him under him immensely, and like you said, it was always a surprise. Like he didn't really ever properly get back involved as a manager in the league, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Coming into the 2005 season, at the beginning of that season, there was a bit of turmoil down in the fact that Pat Dolan left the team. You had Damien Richardson came in then to manage the club. I do remember the final night of that 2005 season. I was sitting here watching the Cork and Derry match as a young fella. Great excitement. You had to beat Derry, if I'm not mistaken, on the night. They went into the game 1 point ahead of you. There must have been great elation because it was tit for tat with Derry all season, but to finally get that league victory, it seemed like a great night in Cork.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, like you said, you couldn't have made it up. Really, the two doesn't really happen too often. Like the two top teams going for the league title, and we're probably lucky that we had to go out and win. Like what it would have been like if we were Derry when we didn't have to win the match, but we knew from the start that we had to win the match, and sort of, I think it was like our time. Really, it just everything felt right that season, and like everything went for us that we needed to go for us, and that night was no different really. Like we scored at good times, and in the end it was a comfortable win really.
Yeah,
And
Cork.
sort of nights to remember.
Yeah, certainly the case. And you had such a strong core to that team. Then in the preceding years afterwards, maybe in the 2 years in particular after winning the league, your players were scouted by many, in terms of, you had, like, as you said, Liam Carney, Greg O'Halloran and the likes had left. Your squad seemed to be decimated almost year on year for 2 to 3 seasons. Was it disappointing for you that, you couldn't keep that squad together and get that back-to-back league victory, which would have, cemented your place as a really good or a great team even?
Yeah, that was a frustrating thing for you. I think it was hard. It was difficult. Yeah, it was hard to accept that you think, like, we've won the league now. You want to keep that squad and you want to add 1 or 2 players to that to improve it. Like, to be fair, like I know we looked at the Shells at the time, and that's what they were doing. They were winning the leagues, and if they didn't, even if they won the league, they'd bring one or two players in that would improve them again, take them up a level. But we never really done that. I think the chairman and probably even Damien were trying to find the right players, and the right players weren't there, or they were too expensive, and sort of we got to a glass ceiling, and we couldn't quite push through it to push on to be, like you said, win 2 or 3 league titles that maybe the players that we had, or if we'd kept, would have been able to win.
Yeah, certainly. And also, just a word maybe on Turner's Cross as well. Turner's Cross is obviously one of the best stadiums in the country for a long time, Dan. But, you know, when you played, even though, you know, the modernisation of stadiums is brilliant and all that, you know, you had the old shed end at the back of the ground at the beginning, and there was an unbelievable atmosphere, you know. It almost feels like when you do modernised stadiums, you have that bit of personal touch that goes away with that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, it's you're not sure you'd be able to stand in the shed if it was there anymore with health and safety and that. But it was perfect. Like I said, it had a special, like everyone would talk about it, like away goalkeepers, away people would always talk about that part of the ground. Everyone knows it as the shed, and it's pretty, like most people have probably got abuse off that, or Cork City players have had their names sung from it, and it was, like you said, it was a great place. But like you said, the modernise the stadiums, it might take a bit from the atmosphere. Definitely takes a bit from the atmosphere, but like I said, it's Cork Turner's Cross now is a super stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it wasn't all rosy, obviously, in your first period with Cork. Then it's been well documented. From 2008 maybe onwards, 2009, there was a lot of problems financially. There was a lot of turmoil at the club. You know, players had to leave. Players weren't being paid, and also you had a bizarre situation where Roddy Collins was drafted in. And I know that you weren't obviously Roddy's biggest fan either at the time. That was obviously an uncertain time in the Cork club and your own situation as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, like I said, it was a horrible couple of years, really. Like I said, with the club, the English company just gave up on the club and stopped doing anything. And then Tom Corlin came in, and you thought, all right, he's Cork, he's going to have the best interest. And then he just got too much for him in the end. And like you said, me and Roddy just didn't really get on from the start. It was probably,
you wouldn't be alone in that.
No, do you know what? It's the weirdest thing, because like he was the first manager, like literally made it as obvious as possible that he wanted me out of the football club as soon as he got there. And I was thinking, right, I'm the captain of Cork City, and I just couldn't get it. I couldn't get my head around why he wanted to do that, or what was the reasoning for doing it, and it just didn't work out. The relationship was pretty average, and like I said, I was lucky that I probably got out before it did, because obviously that just before that the club went completely down the Swanee, to say so. He might have done me a favour, I suppose, getting rid of me out of Cork City to sign for Rovers when I did.
Yeah, you'd have to say that, because your time at Shamrock Rovers coincided with a really successful time for Shamrock Rovers, which wasn't the case in the previous decade when the club were in the first division, had to come back up and rebuild. You moved at a very good time, Dan, and were never present in that Shamrock Rovers team under Michael O'Neill. It was a great couple of years, including 2 league titles and Europa League, which everyone remembers. Obviously, Europa League bow. And actually, I was surprised that it was only 2 years you were there. But I suppose when we were all looking on in envy at you at the time, with all that success.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was like I said. I think the success we had probably masks how little time I was there. Really, like I loved it up there. I would have stayed there for a lot longer, but. The Stephen Kenny, who's not done too bad now, he was just said he didn't want to sign me when my contract was up, which is fair enough. He was a new manager coming in, and that was that really. But like, great memories from there. Like I said, league titles, whichever team you're playing for, the Europe games are brilliant. They're just probably as special as they get for a League of Ireland player, I think. And that's like, the Europa League was really like that level, you go up. Dundalk players are probably the same. Like the qualifiers are brilliant and they're great, but until you get into that group stage, it sort of goes up the level. The off the pitch stuff is on a different level compared to the qualifiers and that. And obviously, being a Spurs fan, to be able to play at White Hart Lane was pretty special. And uh, like I said, it's memories and scoring at White Hart Lane. I always remember that, the pictures from that, and great memories really. Like, I've not a bad word to say about my 2 years at Rovers. Loved it up there. Would have stayed longer if it was meant to be, but it wasn't in the end, and came back to Cork, and probably was happy enough to come back at that time.
Yeah, I know you had a second spell, and I know this might annoy you a bit, but I actually thought you were older in that I didn't think you had retired. That I didn't realise you were actually still, I think it's 38 now. You retired at 33 then. Was that down to injuries, or was that just a personal choice to retire?
No, it was like a personal choice, really. Like you said, it was unfortunately for the financial side was the biggest part of why. Like when I came back to Cork, like I had a mortgage and all that to pay for, so I had to get a job, had to get a full-time job. So that sort of, I was lucky that I could still play football full-time, or play football and have a full-time job for the few years that I did when I came back. But then, like, obviously, as like Cork City was just got promoted when I came back, so they were still sort of growing really. And then obviously John Caulfield came in. He was starting to change it again. The club was going more full time again, training in the mornings and that. So I was able to do less. And then obviously, as he done better for the 2 years that I had with John Caulfield, like they were trying to compete with Dundalk, who were a full time football club. So they sort of went up a level, which happens, and like it was just getting harder and harder to do the two things. And unfortunately, one has to give. And like I said, unfortunately, the financial side of the football world isn't as good in Ireland, so I had to keep the full time job. And like I said, would I have retired earlier? Probably not, but it just felt right. And like I would have gone to a different club. I had a few phone calls from different clubs to go and play for them, but if I couldn't commit to it completely, I think I'd have been letting them down, letting myself down, because it would have been hard with the full time job.
Yeah, spoken like a true former captain of both sides, Rovers and Cork. To move on to the modern, the nowadays, should I say? Actually, we have obviously a big Munster derby and the first meeting of Treaty United versus Cork City tomorrow. I know you'll have a keen interest in this because you do co-commentary for LOI TV at Turner's Cross as well. What's the mood like then in the Cork camp at the moment? I assume it would probably be a bit of frustration considering there's been 3 defeats on the bounce now.
Yeah, I think it is. I think they obviously had a great win against Cove, a tough game to start the season, and like I said, there's especially probably the Cabinteely game and the Athlone game. Like they were well in the games and only losing by the odd 1-0 defeats was hard to take. Like I say, it's probably the youngest squad that I've seen Cork City have since I've been in Ireland, and you just have to remember that there's not many actual appearances in that team, and they're growing as a team. It's going to take a bit of time, I think. Like obviously the financial thing to be able to get the better players in is hard, and it's just going to take a while. I think like there's the right people in charge of the team. Colin Healy's the right man for it, I believe, and it's like I said, it's a tough division. Like I said, if you're looking at 6 or 7 teams in that division, you're going, sure, they'd be able to hold their own in the Premier Division, which is great, but it makes it really hard for Cork City to be challenging to get promoted this season.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up, and brings you on to the next point. Speaking to Noel O'Connor, who you'll obviously know from his time with Pat Dolan, we said, obviously expectation is always massive in Cork, particularly when you're in the second tier, which is where the club really shouldn't be. And they will be expecting a promote. Is that the case then? Will there be an expectation from the fans of a big promotion push? Because as you said, maybe the squad doesn't warrant that as at the moment with the likes of Galway and Shelbourne, the strength they have.
Yeah, I think like everyone I speak to would say they definitely should get promoted, whereas I'd be a little bit more standoffish saying it's harder than you think. This, like you said, Shells, the Galways, the UCDs, the Brays, the Athlone, even they've got really experienced players for this division. Even like Premier Division players that have dropped down to this division. You're going at the minute, if you put our players next to their players, Cork City are probably a small bit behind. But like you said, I think Cork City should be challenging. I believe should be challenging for promotion out of the division, because it was a big letdown when the club got relegated last year, which is was horrible to see, to be honest.
Yeah, if there was any club that was like ourselves, or any city that was like ourselves in Limerick with turbulence in League of Ireland, it would probably be Cork. And they've got a lot more success to show for it in the
Yeah,
last 20 years than Limerick people will be used to. The point you make, though, is right, but they also have a lot of quality in the squad. Obviously, Gerard Morrissey is there, which is very high profile. We know Keane Coleman as well, from his time with Limerick FC. You've got Dylan
yeah.
McGlade, Stephen Beattie. So, on top of that, there is players that can drag those younger players on as well, for the season too.
Yeah, definitely. That's what you're looking for. That's why I say they're the right people. Like you say, probably Garode and Stephen Beattie. You'd probably definitely say they're Premier Division players who speak about it. And like I said, Keane Coleman, McGlade, and all that. They've done it. They've got a lot of experience in the league, whether it's the Premier Division or the First Division. They just they drag them on. You want them to drag the young lads on. It's just like you said, when we haven't scored for a few games, that confidence just drops sometimes in the younger fellas, which we need to, if we can start scoring a few goals here and there, I think the team's going to be in a great position, because there's like the games that I've watched so far, there's hardly anything between the teams. You're probably the same with treaty games that you've watched. There's nothing between the teams really. There's like the odd goal. I don't think anyone's really going to be running away with the division, to be honest. From what I've seen so far, I think it's going to be pretty tight, and if you can keep your best players fit probably for the whole season, you're going to be in a great position.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. One thing we were both in disagreement with, I think, last week was the straight red card shown to Jack Walsh of Cork City. I know that by the letter of the law, maybe if you show any sort of aggression whatsoever, and players will play on that on the opposition. But I have to say, Dan, it is very frustrating to see that type of play acting, and it seems to be rightly in the League of Ireland at both levels now, as well as every other part of the world.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's disappointing. Like I said, I think where it was on the pitch as well. It was right in front of the dugouts, and the Shells lads went ballistic. And well, for the life, I don't think the ref must have sent him off. It must have been the fourth official, because he was the only one that was close enough to it. And sure, that killed Cork City. Like they went a goal up, got back it. Their Shells got back into it, and it was 1-1, a pretty even game. And then the sending off pretty much sort of killed the game. Really, like I said, it was. You like you say, you don't know if it'd be any different if there was supporters there. Maybe if the supporters there, the ref would have gone, nah, I don't think so. But like I said, it's hearsay. Like I say, it's we don't have the old VAR, so we will never know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a hard one to predict tomorrow evening, because I do feel obviously Cork on a big wide open pitch in Max Field coming off 3 defeats will be a very dangerous proposition for Treaty United. That's for sure. Have you been surprised, Dan, with Treaty United's start, from what you've seen, and the fact that the side are still unbeaten?
Yeah, I am. Like, not because they've got some good players. Like, if you go through the squad, there's some good players, good experience, but it's more like, unless like how short they've had together, if you know what I mean. Like, it's really impressive that they've sort of got together pretty much probably the shortest pre-season out of every team in the division, and sort of hit the ground running. If you know, I don't know if anyone really thought they'd start this well as have they had, and it's been really impressive. Like I said, we've Limerick need to have a football team in the League of Ireland, however many teams there's been, even since I've been over here. So it's great
Yeah.
great to see him, and Marcus Field's a lovely place to play as well. So it's been really impressive. Like I said, moving in the right direction, which is all you can do. It's probably it's great that you probably want to get promoted next season, but it's sort of baby steps that the club keeps probably longer than the actual that you want to keep going. Really, you want to be like we want Treaty United around for as long as possible instead of what's happened to the Limerick teams in the past, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, certainly, and that is the focus, trying to create that sustainable model for the club in the long run. Obviously, I mentioned that you are on co-commentary duty every second Friday night at the moment in Turner's Cross. Then I have to say it's commendable to see the League of Ireland stream in Turner's Cross. It's been superb so far. There hasn't been any glitches like there has been in other grounds, but it is a great service for the supporters, especially now that literally you cannot go and see a game.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's, like I said, it's really enjoyable. I really enjoy talking to it. It gets me out on a Friday night. It's probably the only way that I can get into the ground at the minute is if I'm on the co-com. So it's great.
I'd say
And
you might
like
have
I
been able
said,
to swing it some other way.
maybe, but it's, they keep telling me that's the only reason I can get in anyway if I do the co-com. So no, it's enjoyable. Like I said, it's a great service. I know, like, we can moan all we want about it's not ideal. There's no replays and this, but like we said, baby steps. Let's start with it. We're trying. The FAI are trying with it, which is all we can do. Sometimes, look, there's we can talk about the bad things about League of Ireland football till the cows come home, but everything we're trying to do is what we need, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, certainly, and it's been great having you with us, Dan, to give the Cork viewpoint, and obviously speaking about your own career. And we wish you the best of luck with your future endeavours, and obviously with the co-commentary for Cork City. I hope the smile isn't on your face tomorrow night with the result, but we'll see. And once again, thank you very much for joining us. It's been great having you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks for having us, lads.
Thanks,
All the best.
thank you.
Speak to you soon.